name is Wendy Haney, and welcome to what my husband refers to as Wendy's Quilt Factory. I am super blessed to be able to have a home with a basement where my husband's pretty much let me take it over. And so it's kind of become my quilting space, sewing. He does have a embroidery machine that he opted to purchase, but I kind of take that over too once in a while. So I'm very blessed to have this space. And I'm going to be posting more videos in this YouTube channel, and I wanted to let you know a little bit of my history. So you're wondering, why is Wendy sharing all these videos on needlework and quilting? And what does she know about it? So I thought I'd do a little introduction video to let you know. Well, I've had a needle and thread in my hand since as far back as I can remember. I'm guessing 6, 7, maybe younger. I don't know. I just remember doing dish towels where you'd put your hand down and mom or grandma would trace my hand with a pencil on the white dish towel, and then I'd get my little needle and we'd go around the edges of that drawing. And I don't remember if it was a dish towel to be made for grandma or grandma helped me make it for mom. Either way, that was probably the first thing I ever stitched. And then it went on to anything that I could. Back then it was Aunt Martha's iron-on transfers. And I've been doing a little purging in the house recently, and oh my gosh, look what I came across. Yep, this is, I guess you'd call it the first version of cross stitch, where you actually had cross stitches that were ironed on with this transfer. And so I was doing that way back when. That evolved into crewel work. So I could always get my hands on these crewel kits, and I loved doing crewel embroidery, and that was something that my mother did. So this is one of the pieces that I did when I was in high school. It looks a little tattered. It's kind of missing a few snowballs there. I need to figure out how to find some. So that was a piece that I did when I was high school. Also along that same time, I also learned to sew. And I was sewing, oh, I suppose 8. I remember sewing on the dining room table, which I'm lucky enough to actually have that over here in my own sewing room now. And it reminds me of the days when I grew up, and that's where we would lay out our sewing projects. And it was killer on the back, because that table is not the right height to be working on. But I learned how to sew clothes. My mother was an amazing seamstress, and I was blessed to have that skill transferred down to me. I remember sitting, and actually, you know what I started on? Barbie doll clothes. Yep. Heaven forbid I should start with something a little bigger with seams. Nope, I was sewing Barbie doll clothes when I was little. And then as I grew up, I pretty much sewed most of my clothes in high school. And if I hadn't made it, my mom had. I don't think I owned a dress that wasn't made by my mom. And I feel very blessed to have that, to that be part of my life. During high school, and I wish I could remember when, I have yet to find a photo that would give me a time frame, but I'm guessing junior high, maybe 9th grade, I actually made my first quilt. And there it is. Not the greatest cotton fabric that we use today, but I think my grandmother had the butterflies, and I put them on muslin and did the blanket stitch around them. And yellow was my favorite color back then. And then flannel on the back, and everything was tied. So that was my first foray into quilting. It really never did much else with it after that. When I went off to college, I discovered a needlework store in Fargo, North Dakota called Nordic Needle. And Nordic Needle was known for cross stitch. Cross stitch was starting to be a really big thing at that time, and hardanger. So I picked up cross stitch, and that's when I really got, I guess you'd call it, addicted to cross stitch. And so the crewel work kind of went away, and I transitioned over to cross stitch. It was really easy to take with me. I love doing it. Here's a piece that I made, doggone it, I made for my husband. At one time, this was hanging in his office at work, and we both worked at the same company. And somebody commented about it. He goes, "Oh yeah, Wendy made that." They go, "Wendy did that? The person that does all of our network cabling at work?" It's funny how people, I don't know, can't see the personal side of a skill set that somebody has when all they can see is the techie geek in me. So that was something that I fell in love with, and I brought that home, and of course taught my mom and my grandmother as well to do that. So that kind of evolved with that, because the sewing machine never made it to college. So the cross stitch was really the handwork, because I have to have something to do with my hands. After college, moved to Rochester, Minnesota with my first job, and of course got my sewing machine back. So what did I do? Well, one, found the local cross stitch store. Two, I found a class they were doing on quilting. So I took my first real class on quilting and did a log cabin quilt, and this one's getting kind of faded and pretty worn, and it was also hand quilted. Well, I discovered a couple things. One, I love quilting. Quilting, I love the fabrics and the color, and I've always loved that. I've always loved that from when I was a kid. The sewing, even clothes, it was the fabrics and the colors. But this is now patterns and designs, and I fell in love with that and what I could do with it. What I didn't really like was the hand quilting. I'm actually pretty good at it, but nope, did not interest me. The time it would take, that wasn't going to be something I was going to do. So I was now doing a little bit of cross stitch, a little bit of quilting. Cross stitch was still much easier, and quilting was a little more expensive also. The other thing was the late mid-90s, my husband and I actually opened an online needlework store called Northern Needle. And so we really got involved with the cross stitch and the business, and we did that for a number of years online, kind of had a break, and then we had a physical store. And we just found it wasn't going to be a fit for our lifestyle. With my job needed traveling a little bit more and some other things. And so that's kind of a thing of the past, but that was a huge part of my life, and huge with my love of cross stitch and what I did. And my quilting, I still love to quilt, but of course it took more to get it out, have a place to do it. As we moved, I was lucky enough to be able to have a room where I could have my quilting set up, which made quilting much easier to do. So I started doing more of it and making things for when a new niece or nephew was born. For my grandparents, they got some. And it evolved, and I was doing a little bit more of it. But not until we moved from the cities down to where I grew up in southwest Minnesota. I grew up in Tracy, Minnesota, and we ended up building a house on Lake Chetek in southwest Minnesota. And we'd been here for a number of years, and I kept saying, geez, I need to get over to the Lake Chetek, Chetek Lutheran Ministries Bible Camp auction. They have a quilt auction every year in June. I think it's the last weekend in June. And it's like, gosh, need to get over there, but never did. Finally, I did. And I ended up sitting next to Elaine Nyquist. Elaine Nyquist is kind of a sort of distance relative, sort of kind of, but the key thing was she owned the fabric store in Tracy when I grew up. So as I was buying all my fabric for making clothes, she owned the fabric store. And so it was so cool that I got to sit and visit with her. And she was doing a little nudging that day. And apparently there's a group of women that were meeting once a month at the Bible camp on Lake Chetek, which is just on the other side of the lake from where I live. And they would meet once a month for mid-morning through mid-afternoon and quilt. And the quilts that they were working on, they were donating to the Bible camp for the annual quilt auction. And at that time I'm thinking, oh, I don't have enough vacation to take off a day a month for that. But in reality, I actually did, because I hadn't been using it for a while. So I started going over there, and wow, it was amazing in a couple of things. One, I am a techie person that works pretty much in a male-dominated area, and the things that I love to do, pretty much do by myself. I'll sit and do my needlework, or read a book. I've never had relationships with women. I mean, I can't even say I really had a bestie in high school like they talk about today. And so all of a sudden I'm with this group of women, and it was amazing how I clicked. And I realized, wow, I have such a gap in my life of relationships with women. And this was filling it, and I was enjoying it, and my love of quilting then even exploded more because I was learning from them, and they kept talking about going to Camp Lebanon, this retreat at Camp Lebanon, and I'm like, what the heck? And let me back up. Most of these women are retired, and I'm not. So a little bit of an age difference, but you know what? It didn't matter. I loved spending time with these ladies, and eventually I got up the nerve to ask, so can I go to this retreat with you? They're like, yeah, though I don't know if you're going to get in. It's pretty late to, sign up. Most of the time it fills up right away. Lo and behold, they had room. Oh my gosh, I have been addicted. I was drinking the Kool-Aid. It was so much fun to be with them, and so we would go up. At that time, I think it was like 4 days. It's such an amazing time. 4 solid days. All we could do was quilt. Oh, and eat. Lots of food at quilt retreats, let me tell you. And all of these women, and you all had something in common. It was just amazing. And then we come back and then go, oh, by the way, we go to another quilt retreat in Watertown, South Dakota in the fall. Oh, well, okay. So, figured out how I could do that, and here we go. I am totally sucked in, and this is how I have a quilt factory. And as you can see, I also got myself a long arm. I mentioned my husband decided he wanted a machine embroidery, an embroidery machine. Excuse me. So we're definitely involved with it. And what I've recently decided is that, wow, I love to teach people. And I love this stuff. Why not figure out a way to be able to share my love with other people's? And good grief, I'm also a techie, so I think I can figure out the recording, the editing, the getting it online. That shouldn't be a problem. Oh yeah, and my husband's a techie geek too, so he's going to be helping with it as well. So here I am. I wanted to introduce myself and tell you there's a lot more coming, and I hope you're going to enjoy it. And if there's something you would love to see, please let me know. I would love to go ahead and then do a video on that. It's probably going to start with mostly quilting, but hey, oh yeah, forgot to mention, I kind of sidetracked from the cross stitch, but I still need handwork to do by front of the TV, so I kind of switched to what I call counted canvas work. It's an 18 count canvas, and as you can see, the designs I pick out usually end up looking a little bit like quilts. So there's a lot of stuff that I've been involved with that I would love to teach. Also, I have a new Facebook group called Life Fulfilled. I started it several months ago to be able to just share the things that I love. Basically, needlework, quilting, books, and wine. You'll easily find out if you start tracking me long enough. I love my wine. So, quilt nights with my neighbor usually involve wine. Yeah, not usually. It does. It's just the way it is. I will put the link to that Facebook group, but you can just, if you search under groups for Life Fulfilled, it should be pretty obviously, it's kind of like got a blue and purple quilt with some threads. And go ahead and click into that and request to be added. I am asking a few questions so that I know what your interests are, how you found me, what you'd like to see, those kind of things. So just answer the questions. I'll get you all approved once you've answered the questions. And I would love to see you in there. So there it is. Not quite a nutshell, a little bit bigger, but I hope you found it interesting, and I hope you'll start following me and you'll get a lot out of the videos that I'm going to be doing. So take care.